Hello. In this video, we will be thinking about how to write really effective introductions to your essays. Let's get started. By the end of any introduction, you want your readers to understand, firstly, the background to the question you're discussing, secondly, and most importantly, how you're planning to answer the question, and then thirdly, also how you are defining any key terms. You need to do all these things effectively, but also reasonably quickly, so that you leave plenty of space for the essay's main argument. So let's take an example. Let's imagine that you're answering the following question. Do activists seeking to change a country's political ideology by violent means ever achieve their goals? Or are they always forced to compromise? Answer this question with reference to 2 civil wars and 2 rebellions. Take a moment to think about this question. You might want to pause the video. Let's now think about how you might introduce this answer. So at some point you would need a couple of lines or sentences providing a bit of background on the specific civil wars and rebellions you plan to use as case studies. This will help the reader to understand the examples you have chosen and how they relate to the question. You will also need to outline how you plan to answer the question. This does not mean that you need to state your overall answer to the question in your introduction. You just need to show how you will carry out your analysis of the question. In this case, you could simply say that for each of your chosen case studies you plan firstly to identify the ideological goals of the groups instigating the civil war or rebellion, and then you plan to compare these goals to the outcome of this internal conflict. Then secondly, you will compare your examples against one another to see if these rebellions or civil wars did ever achieve their goals. Again, you're signposting to your reader how you plan to develop your argument. Introductions are a good place to define any key terms included in the question. Sometimes this won't be necessary, but I've deliberately selected a rather tricky question here with some key terms that definitely need to be carefully defined. In this case, it would be appropriate to discuss exactly what you mean by civil war and rebellion, and crucially, what the difference is between them. When writing definitions, it can be helpful to use dictionaries, and certainly you will rarely define terms in such a way that your definition clashes with a dictionary definition. But in cases such as this, where detailed distinctions need to be made, you may find it necessary to decide for yourself how you might reasonably identify the difference between these 2 very similar terms. Another point to bear in mind is to make sure that your introduction, and therefore your essay as a whole, responds directly to the specific wording of the essay question. Some questions might ask you to focus on causes, others on consequences or impact. Others ask you to conduct comparisons or something else. So the key message here is, make sure you fully understand what the question is asking of you and use your introduction to show how you're responding to that question. Putting this all together, by the end of your introduction, your reader should have a bit of background on the question along with the definition of any key terms. And the reader should know how you plan to go about answering it. I hope that this video has been useful to you. For further advice on essay writing, please see the other videos in this collection.